Absolutely. Notice I didn't say it literally, but I can say absolutely. Welcome to our monthly live stream. My name's Patrick Coffin, and I run a thing here from beautiful Southern California, wedged between Hollywood and Mexico, called Coffin Nation, and we have members in 25 countries. And this is the kind of thing we do every week. So if you are not familiar with Coffin Nation, you can check out coffinnation.com, sign up, find out what it's all about. I also host a weekly podcast, which is oddly titled The Patrick Coffin Show. This week's guest is Dion Dimucci, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, unbelievable musician, 81 years old. He sounds like a guy half his age. He was famous for The Wanderer and Run Around Sue, Abraham, Martin, and John. He basically has been doing an album every year or two since 1957. Dion, while I'm talking about Dion, was supposed to get on the airplane that took off on February 3rd in the middle of the night, 1959. That was the day the music died, according to the Don McLean song, American Pie. Dion did not get on that aircraft for reasons that he explains in the interview. And minutes later, the plane crashed, killing Buddy Holly, J.P. Richardson, also known as the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens. That's the day the music died. But Dion lives, and this album features input and contributions from Steve Van Zandt, Jeff Beck, a guy by the name of, what's his name? Oh yeah, Bruce Springsteen, Van Morrison, liner notes written by Bob Dylan. So check out my interview. That's at patrickcoffin.media. So there's lots to talk about in this so-called culture war, especially in this massive artificial topsy-turvy land called the CCP virus lockdown. I've done a fair amount of focus on the sources of this virus, the role of the CCP government in lying about it, in letting people fly all over the world before locking China down. Today we're going to talk about President Trump versus Joe Biden. We're going to read some hate mail. We're going to talk about trad love with my good friend Tim Gordon. Tim is the host of Rules for Radicals, which is also the name of a book that he co-wrote with his brother David, forward by Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire, happily endorsed by yours truly. I want to bring Tim in here.
Select all cameras.
It's going to happen.
Swap.
Through the magic.
Camera swap. Go in the
I think it did it.
Swap.
I think it did it. Look at that.
Swap order.
Yes. Houston? Ding, ding, ding. Is this on? Tim Gordon, are you there, sir? Fantastic. Good to see you. I just want to give kind of an overview for folks who don't know who I am or might not know who you are. We do this internally inside Coffin Nation every week. It's called Ask Away Thursdays. But every month I bring on an A-list influencer or someone who's been in the news. You've certainly been in the news for 8 or 10 reasons. And you're certainly, I'll say this, Tim, for someone who has endorsed the book and has talked about it, even behind your back. Rules for Radicals. Rules for Retrogrades. You've modeled it by being willing to stand up and take a couple on the chin. You lost your job at Garces Memorial Catholic School in Bakersfield, California. You described Black Lives Matter and the movement that feeds it as terroristic, and you've opposed it, and for that you lost your job. So let me start there. What can you tell us about where your pushback lawsuit is for wrongful dismissal and the other things that are on the table as to why you received the Golden Boot Award?
Well, thanks for having me again. And one interrogation right at the beginning. What if the entire firing of Tim Gordon from Garces Memorial were an intricate four-dimensional chess game, a publicity stunt? Wouldn't you guys think that much more of my intellect? It's not, by the way. It really, it's just food for thought.
I think the time-space continuum just suffered a tear on the side angle there.
Can you imagine if someone that smart? Yeah. No, the lawsuit is at, we're moving forward. We're going to see in the next week or so, literally week, what the response by the diocese is. We're kind of waiting for their response, but Lamandry and Jonah is my representation, and they're excellent, and they really do litigate. This is not game. Just that so many play just to force settlement, and all the petitioned party or the defendant has to do is say, okay, let's go to court, and then the petitioner scurries away with its tail between its legs. Nope, we'll litigate this if they want to do that. We're prepared to go all the way. So we're going to see what the response is by the defendant. We are the petitioner. I am, I guess. And let's rock and roll, baby. That's what I say.
This is a top flight law firm that doesn't play blink. Mr. Lemandry is qualified to argue before the Supreme Court, which he has many times. They're the law firm that defended the San Diego Christian firemen, and the department there was going to force them to join the gay pride there in San Diego, or lose their jobs. And Mr. Lemandry was their counsel. The reason why, I think the main reason why at least the Mount Soledad cross still stands is because of his advocacy. So this is someone that's good to have in your corner.
Yeah, he's a pro. And so is Mr. Paul Jonah, a little younger, man, wise beyond his years. Great people, and they're on the wrong side of the fight. So I'm ready to go. I'm ready to fight. This is not a game. Rules for Retrogrades is a book. While it's not a board game, it is a book, but it's a real tactical approach to fighting the radical left. And sometimes, I've been saying this for years, I do have a law degree. I did go to law school, and I did work as a first year out of law school at a real law firm. Litigation is not something that conservatives should be afraid of. There's a kind of, folksy kind of Americana knee-jerk response to litigation that conservatives too often have. And it's like, man, go get your due. You don't want to be over litigious, but if you've been wronged, which a lot of people, a lot of parties, a lot of, eventually speaking, we'll call them defendants, wrong you, go get what is due to your case. And of course, the judiciary overhears cases and controversies, which are particular facts that are constrained to you and your life and your history, but they represent that fact pattern of your case represents analogizable facts for a whole bunch of other people's cases. And this is how the common law works. It's partly judge-made law, and you might be a really important piece of the equation that fights for the culture war in terms of judge-made law, the judiciary. You can really make something good happen by litigating a case. So too often conservatives shrink from all sorts of fights. Don't shrink from a legal fight if you've been duly fired or whatever. That's what I have to say to
I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle, from the north to south angle. Growing up as a Canadian, we always identified Americans as the tribe that wants to sue the bastards.
Right.
Much more likely to bring all the conflicts up to the front of the store and have the fist fight and clear the air, clear the ionosphere. Tim, let me hit you with something that you may have had before, and that is this objection that St. Paul recommends that Christians not sue each other because kindness. Then what?
Sure. Well, so this is a prudential judgment, and it's absolutely valid. If you can work out your private grievance, with your brother, your Christian brother, leave your gift at the altar, or leave it before you drop it at the altar, and go and square with your brother. You don't want to take to court what can be solved at home or behind the scenes naturally. That's a prudential issue. But I mean, if we're talking about, an unlawful termination of a man's job, I can't just call up the diocese and say, hey, let's settle up, and if we give each other a hug, can you please really nicely with a cherry on top give me my job back or whatever. I mean, that's not how the common law operates, and it is how prudence operates as between individuals. Never reduce yourself to suing when there are better means. I guess that's what St. Paul's saying. This is not some magisterial teaching that is black letter law, no pun intended, against using the black letter law to to come to justice, particular justice, as Aristotle calls it. The courts are the best way when it's a big corporation or a diocese going after a little guy. In this case, a little guy who's a big guy.
I would say a little guy who's a big guy in a different sense, and that is you're a big guy to your students. I was at that school. I saw how the students interacted with you and looked up to you. And the lesson, what's the lesson at the end of the day that the students receive by the administration cutting off the head of a bold Catholic teacher who's talking about something that's trending in the news in a way that is in accord with the gospel without compromise, but is also politically incorrect? And one more also, you have black conservative fans who also think that Black Lives Matter is terroristic, that it's pure, this is trained Marxism at work. It's working toward the destruction of the family and so on. So what's the lesson? I mean, if Catholic education is about imparting lessons, what's the lesson students draw? Shut your mouth, precisely. I think is the lesson.
Yeah. Precisely. But I mean, the thing is, any way you slice it, when you fire a guy, it gives him some street cred. And if he's supposed to be this kind of bad boy conservative, willing to get fired, you want to test the person's mettle. You're like, okay, you talk a good game. Because I've said it for years. Oh, hey, I'm going to probably get fired just for being a Christian out in the public square, even though my job is being a Roman Catholic Christian. And now it happens, so it's important to show strength, right? And to show, this is still unjust. Predictability doesn't justice make, but it wasn't the most unpredictable thing in the world that, a Catholic, a big education mill type Catholic diocese school ends up firing a Catholic just for saying the Catholic thing. And I know I say it a little salty, but that's, the students take away the principle like, wow, this guy, gets fired for being a Catholic. I mean, I kind of talked about this in the classroom. How many good Catholics get fired for being good Catholics? They see it happen to me. It doesn't crush their hopes or dreams or anything. If anything, it's a kind of street cred for someone like me, a right-wing conservative Catholic.
It's social proof. You lived out the script that you talked about on paper happened to you in real life. And, Logos is rising. Providence is at work here. You've crafted a more home-based curriculum. Two family friends of mine are signing up. So let me throw you a really soft, squishy Nerf ball. Tell us about your education curriculum post-Garces, and how can people connect?
Thanks a million. Yeah, so it was kind of part of the response. We got up timothyjgordon.com with lightning speed. We actually had it up beforehand, but we got it up partly for the I guess publicity campaign, the donor box. So if you want to help me out or wanted to help me out, you could go to timothyjgordon.com and donate there, and you don't have to give your money to evil GoFundMe. You could continue to give your money to donorbox.com, which helps conservatives and politically neutrals. And that was really amazing. We didn't have to lean much on GoFundMe. Also at timothyjgordon.com, if you click enroll, is kind of a part of our extended publicity plan. We're just like, look, I'm offering 3 classes. They're amazing classes. I think the one we're getting empirical feedback is the best, and students always love it. The Aristotle's Ethics class in the fall begins in September. It's almost full. We only reserved 150 spots because they're Zoom classes, and you want to actually be interacting with me, your teacher. It's a class I've taught for years. I tweak it throughout the years, and it's really a dynamite course. Probably the most important course a human adult could take is Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. In the fall, turns into a philosophy of man course in the spring. We go September through April. There's also, running along the same time span, a church history course that goes the whole distance, September through April. Really great course. Really, really important. These are probably the 2 most important courses that an adult Catholic can take. Also, there's a just fall class, no spring version. It's a 14-week class of Catholic Republic. We go through every jot and tittle of my book.
I think the question everybody wants answered is, will Aristotle's face appear on a skateboard?
Yeah. It sounds like some of my non-fans I hear from on. Well, they'd be fine. I guess they'd be fine with that because some of the haters out there don't like the idea of sacred art. They hate it. If you put sacred art on a mug, I guess when you put it through, these people have no concept of Aristotle. So there are 4 Aristotelian causes, right? And the formal and the final cause are the ones that make it the thing that it is. And so it's not desecratory to do art on a skateboard, which is what you're referring to, or a mug, or a T-shirt. It's not desecratory if the main purpose of the art is to display it in a kind of interesting or unexpected form. A skateboard, a mug, a T-shirt. It's not. Don't think about the mug or the T-shirt as it's going through a wash. Don't think of the skateboard as it's getting dirt kicked on it, which is an accidental material causation, and that's not what makes a thing what it is.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's a
my
good
haters
point.
say that.
We can turn to trad love, and I suggest that we read some hate mail. I don't want to give out trad websites. They're invariably run by FNCs, and I don't want to give any oxygen to the fake name coward room. But they watch both of us all the time, Tim. This is the funny thing. Free advertisement for my show and yours, Rules for Retrogrades. I learned that I'm a cretin. I am a, let's see, irrelevant, non-existent entity. It's like, guys, why do I occupy rent-free space in your head? If you don't like my show, it's okay. You don't have to, but you don't have to watch it and then stamp your impotent feet in comm boxes. And Tim, why do so many trads write under fake names? And they're always these pompous Latinisms like the Vitus Nitus fighting hereticus, whatever.
Right. Crusader.
Yeah,
trad,
just telegraphing mom's basement.
Yeah. Right. The ones that have them because they're cowards. I mean, I don't know. I think you call it out pretty directly on Twitter. It's like, look, there's a couple good reasons to be an FNC. I guess you're not the C, and if there's a good reason, you'd just be the FN. I have a couple friends that run under FNs. If you work for the government, you have to. If you want to comment or give love to Pat or me, that's always accepted under a fake name, and you can't because you work for an extremely liberal corp like Apple. I mean, that's fine. But if you are a fake name person, an anon, then you should probably, I mean, I don't know, focus on being positive or something, because when you're giving out negative vibrations, as they used to say in the 60s and 70s, to, people that have the stones to put their name and their face out there, and you're doing so without a name or a face, just a cartoon of some LARPy knight, then you look like you might lack the stones altogether, and that's how I'm always going to receive it. I mean, it's cowardice.
The C part of FNC are the people who want to take a pot shot. They want to initiate a debate. Well, I'm not going to. First of all, I don't have a debate show, and secondly, as you say, I'm out in the open. I use my real name, and I just don't want to go down multiple rabbit holes with people who are hiding behind something. I have a lot of Anon fans, and some of them are hilarious, and I don't make a big deal of it. If they're neutral, if they have comments, I don't want to pound people, because some people do have sensitive jobs. But I love the ones that automatically, within 5 seconds of being called an FNC, I have a high-level government job, I'm part of Bond's American wing.
Right.
The fate of millions hangs upon my anonymity, sir. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Always, invariably. And it's really a job slinging burgers at Wendy's, living out of mom's basement. I mean, a lot of times it's people without jobs altogether, because sometimes I actually engage them, and I'm like, hey, I've gotten a couple to give me their names on DM. That's what a compelling bastard I am. But, I mean, straight up, let's say it, man. I've said it on some of my shows on Rules for Retrogrades a couple different times. There is a problem in the traditionalist movement, which I'm a part of, I think. I'm not sure exactly what makes you a trad. It's sure as hell not just liking the Latin Mass or going there, because some people, treat it like a difficult to win prize just to be labeled a trad. Mm-hmm. But there seems to be a problem with natural virtue, which with thinking that one can come to supernatural virtue, faith, hope, love, while skipping natural virtue, which is physical excellences, moral and intellectual excellences, those described in Aristotle. Take my Aristotle course. But you can't. You usually go, the normal course of events, with some exceptions, is you go through the natural virtues first. Then you get into the supernatural virtues. It's hard. You really should be physically fit. And I know I'm looking at you, FNCs, because they're the ones making fun of me. They're making fun of Chris Plants on a show he did the other night because he'd done a workout, and he looked good, but he just had wet hair, so he threw a ball cap on backwards. And they didn't like that. They don't like that. As a youth, I was a serious skateboarder or a basketball player. I call it revenge of the nerds, Pat, because it's guys that are like, we weren't good at sports, and when you hit 24, then all of a sudden we just decreed like a categorical imperative that everyone stops talking about sports, and most people are actually on board with this just because they get their first job and they forget that it's important to retain your athletic ability for your health's sake even. So they resentment, as the French call it. They resent like heck anyone that's like, no, I'm going to stay fit. I'm going to keep doing the things I love to do. I'm not a LARP. I don't want to smoke a pipe, man, and I don't wear a 3-piece suit to the grocery store. Right? It's 100 degrees outside. I'm wearing athletic clothing and whatever. So you do you, right?
To be fair, though, they do pay Chris Plants and you and me a lot of money. They expect a product that makes them happier.
That's true. Hey, you get what you pay for, and these guys are paying top dollar, so they are our masters. What is that, man? How much free entertainment have you gotten? I hate to use the old liberal line from the 80s and 90s on TV, like The Simpsons would defend with this, but it's true. I mean, you don't have to be a patron of mine or any of these people's. If you don't like, what I love is when it's usually the FNCs will go, oh, it's so distracting that you move your head a little when you talk. It's like, dude, it's not that easy to just sit here and put together a cogent show for an hour. Like, if I move my head a little when I talk because I'm Italian, tough. If you don't like that Chris Plants wears a backward ball cap, tough. I can't stand it. I don't know why they think their opinion matters. It doesn't matter in real life. Why would it matter on the internet?
Yeah. I came to this understanding that you don't have to be a pro athlete. You don't have to be even a fan of pro sports to be in shape. So I'm a late lifter. I love strength training. I find it invigorating. I find it arduous, and I think that's the point. The manly life is a life that's arduous. I'm a big fan of Brett McKay's Art of Manliness. There's tons of stuff there, beautifully rendered stuff, and the importance of lifting. It's a good repartee on social media. Bro, do you even lift? You see some of these Antifa guys. I mean, they can barely lift a sledgehammer off the pavement, let alone swing it mightily into a car door.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, like, think of the guy that attacked, without knowing it, broke into J.R. Smith's car. The NBA player, he was wailing on the guy, and the guy looked like he was 80 pounds. Also, lifting weights and being athletic boosts your testosterone, which men need. The feminists aren't going to like this point, but they don't like anything I say. Testosterone is good for men, and generally speaking, it's bad for women, which is why it shuts down the female reproductive system, and it heightens the male reproductive system. But even more than that, it fights cancer. I think it helps to eliminate some kinds of free radicals within the body. It helps guard against baldness. Tons of stuff. It's good for cardiovascular health. Men need testosterone, and you can't get testosterone even just by running. Did you know running for longer? I ran a marathon, man, but running for longer than 25 minutes at a time drastically lowers your testosterone. You can't just do cardiovascular stuff. Yeah. Men need to lift. You need to do upper leg stuff. Whether you like it or not, that's everyone's least favorite part of a workout. The upper leg lifts are where you boost your testosterone. It's good for your health if you want to be around for your kids, and you need to look tough and be able to defend.
I watched many marathons on television, Tim. Many.
Like a marathon of marathons in a row? Several?
Yeah, and I've seen The Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman too, so I think that counts for something. I grew up playing hockey. Most Canadian boys can skate before they can walk, so Skating and biking was all part of it. But back to the arduous thing, there's a fittingness between men who are committed to strength training and to exercise to the spiritual life, because they both involve making a servant of your body. I don't feel like praying. Okay, get over yourself and get on your knees. I don't feel like working out. Okay, well, just put one sneaker on. Once that first sneaker goes on, you're in the flow, and then you're just out the door. The Bible says prayer is a sacrifice of praise, right? Not reading a magazine of praise. So there's a pinch to it. It's not easy, and it's got to be daily.
There's also a kind of those are great points. I want to add to the first one you made. There's also a kind of Protestant notion that's too alive and well within the traditionalist movement, that prayer, sacramentals, and even the sacraments are a kind of surrogate for having a hobby. Again, a lot of these guys make fun of me for the fact that I have 3 or 4 things I'm naturally good at and I've worked at my whole life and I still enjoy. Sports being one of them. The sacraments and the sacramentals are there for your salvation. The whole thing is soteriological. They're not there for your entertainment. What's there for your entertainment are round orb balls. They call it sports ball to mock it, like only dummies play sports. Or weight sets are there for, in a more disciplined way, your entertainment. Prayer is not there for your entertainment. Mass is not even there for your entertainment. It's there for your salvation. So when they sometimes talk about prayer, prayer becomes fun if you pray in Latin. I love Latin. I think it's maybe the coolest language too, whatever. But the point is, it's not an entertainment product. There's a kind of emotivism, emotionalism, rather, that runs appurtenant to a lot of these trad modes of thought, where they're like, I don't even have a hobby. I'm just so into the faith. It's like, yeah, that's because you converted 9 months ago, and you came right into a borderline schismatic sect at best, and you're going to be whatever. This might burn out in 9 more months, whatever. Yeah. If you're there for the long haul, marathon analogy completely appropriate. If you're there for the marathon, get some hobbies, natural virtue, alongside the supernatural virtue of faith, hope, love, religion. Religion's also a natural virtue, and it goes well with the mood of the day, right? Like, Jesus was a man. If Jesus was alive in 2020, he wouldn't like what's going on in the NFL or NBA. But if he were here in America, he'd be able to talk NFL and NBA with us. He was a man as well as God. And it wasn't just nonstop sacraments and sacramentals all the time. They're not here for your entertainment. Entertaining things are. And they divert you so you can be a better worshiper when you're at Mass.
Can you shift to your right a little bit, Tim? Your color went a little off, and
he's kind of off.
Just like what's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, yeah, fixed. You said soteriological, and some people, because we've been satirical, you meant soteriological. Explain to people who've never heard the word soteriological. It's an important word, but it's all intellectual like, eh? So what is soteriology?
Soteriology is the study of those things which conduce to our salvation. Not
being made holy.
Yeah, being made holy, being made a saint, as you always say. So, I mean, it's great. All I was saying is, some weeks I go to the Latin Mass, and I'm like, wow, this is actually at the lowest level. This, you could take it or you can leave it. Some weeks it's there, some weeks it's not there. There's a phenomenological thing where I'm like, oh, I'm like enjoying this like a form of entertainment. It doesn't matter. Because other weeks I go and I'm not really enjoying it like a form of entertainment, like watching a show.
Yeah.
These trads talk like every week you go, and it's very Protestant. You talk like every week you go to the Latin Mass, and it's just totally fun. Whereas, if you go to the Novus Ordo, it's always going to be boring. It's like, it doesn't reduce to what's entertaining to us. We have entertaining things that are much less important at a much more superficial level to entertain us Monday through Saturday. But when you go to church on Sunday, some weeks you're in the perfect mood, other weeks you're not. And guess what? It doesn't matter. The emotions that run concurrent to what's going on with the sacraments don't matter so much. You want to be in the proper disposition, but the fun part doesn't matter. Get fun elsewhere.
Yeah, it's the fact of it. You go to, let's say, Eucharistic adoration outside the Divine Liturgy. There's a what looks like a white wafer. There's the host, and it's enthroned in the monstrance. I don't have to feel fuzzy about it or profound feelings or get weepy. It's enough for me that the Son of God described that host as only a host in appearance, but substantially is his own body and blood, soul, and divinity. That suffices for me. I don't need Eucharistic miracles. I'm glad they exist. I don't need private apparitions, the ones that are approved. I'm glad they exist too. I've never been a miracle chaser. I've never had mystical experiences, but faith is a gift. And it's a gift to be able to see something without having an emotional thing attached to it. And I think you're right. I think some liturgists, and perhaps even some traditionalist-minded liturgists, they see the liturgy as a kind of production. We're going to put on Mass, and we're going to, roll out the carpet. And then it's a subtle thing, but it verges perilously close to worshiping the Mass instead of worshiping the Father. It's the very kind of horizontal self-worship that we laugh at in Novus Ordo Masses. And, lighten the low for liturgies that appear at places like the LA Congress. But no one's immune to that kind of horizontalization of things. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Of course. Yeah, it's precisely what I was trying to get at too. I mean, again, not to sound like, I don't sometimes, every once in a while, go to a beautiful Mass and think, wow, this is really entertaining today. But that's the exception, not the rule. If it is the rule for some people and they're being sincere in their reportage thereof, awesome, great for you. But that's not what it's there for. That entertainment, pastimes are there to pass your time. You don't need to. The reason we're not required to go to daily Mass, even though it's a good practice, is because it is not soteriologically necessary, right? It is not necessary for the salvation of the individual. And go if you can, but even then, it's only an hour a day. You got it. Like bosses are known to say in office television shows, you got to do something, man. You can't just sit there. When you're not at Mass, you got to do something. And why not keep your body fit or your mind fit? A lot of these people claim they read, but I'm just sick of the revenge of the nerds thing.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, they've came to the faith from various backgrounds. Last Tuesday, and all of a sudden they're a professional pundit, and they're opining on the grand scope of things. That's a killer too.
Yeah. Well, an internet education is better than any real accredited education, as we all know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I'm glad it works because, hey, now I'm doing it. I'm relying on it more than ever. I'm helping to try to educate people, not to accredit. And I say these classes are good. You can get some really good internet education. It's just, don't get snotty with it. I mean, don't get snotty if you have an Oxford education either. Just don't get snotty in general. But it is going to be low-hanging fruit as a defense for a guy like me when they start, the 20-year-old LARPers start poking fun at the fact that I'm only trained with an ecclesiastical philosophy degree. I shouldn't be talking about anything. It's like, well, dude, I mean, yes, I know. I never said I'm formally trained in theology. I'm trained in philosophy and the law. But I'm pretty much only talking about current events in the church, philosophy, and the law, and
it also
with the theological tincture.
P.S. It doesn't even matter. You could have 9 PhDs from the most uber traditionalist institutions on earth, but if they disagree with you or don't like you, it doesn't profit you anything.
No.
G.K. Chesterton had an art school degree that he quit out of. The Blessed Virgin Mary, I don't think had an advanced degree. I'd have to look that up. It's a worship of educational pieces of paper.
Right.
Autodidact lifestyle, people who are teaching themselves. I think this is another providential side effect, obviously inadvertent from the oligarchic point of view, and that is the self-learning that people are doing online because schools and the economy and churches and malls are shut down. So people are turning to various sources that don't involve going to a library. And I think that's to the good, as long as you're filtering what you're consuming on the internet, because there's a lot of faux knowledge, and of course it's awash in fake news. Tim, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I don't want to sound like I'm 180ing here. It's beautiful. I'm relying on it now more than ever. I want people to trust me. They know what bona fides is. I hope you do feel you can trust any of the online educators that you're taking classes from because you're depending on them. But it's funny when people, I guess I'm just still addressing the FNCs who sometimes sour on one, whether it's you or I or others, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, I saw something on this other channel earlier today and they contradicted you. I think they're way smarter. It's like, well, go listen to them, man.
Yeah.
Don't get snotty about it.
Don't have any glute damage when the door hits you on the way out.
Right.
I'm racking the shotgun. You and I have talked about racking the shotgun. Every show I do, someone's going to be offended and they're not going to follow me anymore. And that's okay because others are going to be attracted to it and those that are staying are strengthened by it. And I guess that's one of the rules for retrogrades, right? Don't be afraid to earn enemies.
Yeah.
Tim Gordon, are you a trad?
Is this a Pat question or is this one of Pat's followers' questions?
No, this is me curious about how you would identify. Do you identify as a trad?
Do you identify? Well, it depends. On Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do. As Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I do. And I'm not gender binary. I mean, I don't know. Here's the thing, man. I'm really into definitions. I mean, that's how into formal causation I am. I want to know what a thing has to do to be called that thing. I'm not sure exactly what a trad is. If a trad is someone that thinks that inescapably the Latin Mass is superior to the Novus Ordo, then I am a trad. I mean, inescapably. I do talk to some people that say, oh, if the Novus Ordo were done like the Platonic form of the Novus Ordo, if it were done perfectly, it could be as good as the Latin Mass, the Tridentine version of the Latin Mass. No, I disagree. So some people say that that's sort of the sine qua non for being a trad, and if so, then yeah, that's me. I don't think that any iteration of the Novus Ordo, they're all valid, and I mean I end up at the Novus Ordo very often, but I don't think any version of the Novus Ordo is as sanctifying as the Latin Mass. So does that make me a trad? I am suspicious of many sections within the Vatican II documents. I, unlike many people who call themselves trad, know the Vatican II documents and am writing a book on them right now for Tan Books. So I am suspicious of the intent that went in by not a small minority, a large minority section of the Periti at Vatican II. That might make me a trad. Do I support breakaway groups? No. Do I have issues with the self-consistency of one Archbishop Lefebvre? Yeah, I think he did far too little at the council to convince others not to sign the documents. He signed all of the documents, and there are problematic sections. And I think he did far too much afterward. I think that's kind of the new litmus test, is where do you stand on Archbishop Lefebvre? Mm-hmm. And so I think his theology's better than pretty much most of the people there, but I think he kind of wussed out at the council, and then afterwards he overcompensated in ways that made him objectively disobedient. So I don't know what people would consider me now. I don't know the definition of the thing. Do you count yourself a trad?
I don't, because it fits under my general rubric of my allergy toward adjectives. I'm a Catholic, and I recognize that 60 years after an ecumenical council, we're still dealing with flotsam and jetsam, not just to do with the spirit of Vatican II, and this is something that I appreciated in Archbishop Vigano's letter, about which our mutual friend Philip Lawler interviewed him on, and that is, the problem is not just trying to segment over here the spirit of Vatican II as opposed to the pristine letter of Vatican II. It's the letter of Vatican II. It has bombs in it. It has studied ambiguity. And Edward Schillebeeckx wrote about this, that the men who, Schillebeeckx, the dissenting Dutch heterodox priest and theologian, the men who wrote these documents, I'm thinking about Dignitatis Humanae, certain portions of Dei Verbum and Gaudium et Spes, the men who wrote and changed the original schema that were submitted by people like Cardinal Ottaviani and others, they went home and implemented those documents. So It's true if you mean X. It's not true if you mean Y. So all of what we call weaponized ambiguity of Pope Francis has its modern genesis in those documents, especially the four biggies. Another level of confusion that I have toward the Second Vatican Council, which I accept as valid, I don't think we should delete it. I don't think it's invalid or even rises to the level of heresy. But the layer of confusion, and I'll pitch to you, Tim, is that we keep hearing, on the one hand, it's just a pastoral council, the first of its kind ever, which is not true either. So it's a pastoral council that is meant to update the church, that ressourcement, back to the sources, let's raise the bastions, R-A-Z-E, as von Balthasar said back in his book in the 1940s, and stop this fortress mentality. We'll open the windows of the church and we'll let the Holy Spirit blow through, and it'll be a springtime. Right. We've seen a catastrophic bleed out of the church. And I think we should recognize the 800-pound gorilla is the documents themselves. So on the one hand, it's a pastoral council, so everybody chill, back on decaf, calm down. On the other hand, Lumen Gentium is the dogmatic constitution of the church. Dei Verbum is the dogmatic constitution on divine revelation. Dogmatic, not pastoral. So are its norms binding or are they not? Was something new introduced or was it not? One thing we could probably say as a generality is that there were no new definitions. There was not much being attacked in Catholic doctrine that required the ecumenical universal stamp of approval or correction as we see in councils like Trent. That's a lot, but I just wanted to prim the pump and see what your thoughts were.
Yeah, four things, I think. First off, there are these trad talking points that many of which are just wrong. They're unstudied. It's sui generis is the only out of 21 ecumenical councils. It's the only one that's non-dogmatic, and therefore it's the only pastoral one. That's just wrong. There are like two, or depending on how you cut it, three others there is no anathematized heresy. There is no dogmatically defined orthodoxy or definition at two or three other councils. Number two, trad talking point number two that is flat wrong. While Paul VI said it was a pastoral council, which it is, and it's not the only one, he did say that it is binding ordinary magisterium. What is binding ordinary magisterium? Now, it's not extraordinary because there's no dogmatic definitions, so it's not infallible. However, he makes very clear, because he was dealing with dissent at the time, and I'm not a Paul VI fan, but the point is, he makes very clear that it's a valid council, and it's an ordinary act of the Catholic magisterium, and there's a passage in there that trads kind of just talk around. One has to, in other words, if the Pope says as an act of his pontificate, even if it's not infallible, every priest in the world wear the tonsure, you have to do it, right? So the fact that
for folks who don't know what's the tonsure, Tim?
Just the haircut, the wacky, monk haircut or whatever.
Right.
I mean, or shave your hair into a mohawk. If the Pope says that, right? If we are Catholics, these are the same LARPs that say there's only one valid form of government. It's a monarchy. Well, okay. There's three forms of valid government for secular governments, but that's a whole other topic. There's only one government that must be a monarchy. That's the Roman Catholic Church, right? And when the Pope says this, even if we think he has bad prudence or socialist leanings, which Paul VI did have, I think, both of those, it doesn't matter. In a monarchy, if he says shave your hair into a mohawk or wear a backwards ball cap around, because the trads really hate that, then you have to do it. And if you say, no, I'm not going to do that, that's formal adherence to a schismatic act, right? If you say, no, this act of the magisterium, because it's not dogmatic, I don't have to do it. No, you're wrong. That could be a formal adherence to a schismatic act. Just because it's pastoral in its nature, or it's disciplinary in its nature, does not give a religious the right to disobey. So that needs to be set out. Yeah.
Was that fourth? You said four.
That was only the second, actually. The third and fourth were just which of the sacred constitutions, I think I might be utterly alone on this, I find the most troubling. Dignitatis Humanae, I find the least troubling of all of them, actually not troubling at all. All the other ones you mentioned, I'm going through them with a fine-tooth comb. I agree. They have weaponized ambiguity. The weaponized ambiguity, like Skilabik said, was designed, I think, to mislead people without having the wrong black letter law, with having the right black letter law. Tie goes to the runner, tie goes to, okay, we can look back on this later and retroactively say, well, it's ambiguous, so a change can't be made with ambiguous language. Yet I do think it was bad intent in the other three of the documents that you mentioned.
Can you shift a bit to your right?
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
Much better. Yeah, Ralph McInerney has a book on this called What Happened to Vatican II, or What Went Wrong, or something like that. And Dietrich von Hildebrand's, I think it's called Desolate City? Trojan Horse in the City of God.
Trojan Horse in the City of God.
The other one is Anne Roach Muggeridge, Desolate City. She's a Canadian historian. She's the daughter-in-law of Malcolm Muggeridge. Another good book. Okay.
Awesome.
We got some questions here, and I want to just start with a member of Coffin Nation, our good friend and very recently retired plastic surgeon extraordinaire, Deacon Patrick Lappert. Tort litigation is the way to kill the transgender medicine juggernaut. True or false?
Well, in the sense of there's tons of malpractice that's associated with the surgeries. The suicide rate is sky high after these kids, are being tricked into doing the gender
full mutilation surgery,
mutilations, and it's utterly irreversible. So yeah, I mean, I agree that it's a significant portion of the solution.
Yeah, last week's guest makes this terrifyingly clear. Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. Daughters and young girls are the target of all this. The number of boys who want to be girls is minimal now compared to this juggernaut that Deacon Patrick weighed in on. Matthew David Shadricks, Dr. Gordon, another Catholic lawyer, teacher to another. Here it is. Wrap your hands in rope, dip them in super glue, and then in broken glass, then punch, brother.
I like it. Yeah.
There's retrograde attitude right there.
Yeah. I used to have a pair of, after 9/11, I was scared to get on planes without a weapon. So I would super glue CDs to my weightlifting gloves, therefore, to the tops of them. Therefore, if terrorists were there, and it were time to dance with them, right, I could just break the CDs, which are very sharp, and they would have passed through security, and I'd have like little Wolverine, whatever those would be, like sharp razor gloves. And I thought that was pretty cool and clever.
That is another rationale for working out and learning a martial art of some kind. It makes you harder to kill. That's a good thing. We should be harder to kill, and always be in yellow zone. If white zone is you're prey to a bad guy. Yellow zone is not paranoia. It's just being aware of your surroundings. What looks out of place? What's that guy doing that for? What's evildoers love distracted citizenry.
Right.
Matthew Shadrick says it's called living in their dojo. Chadwick Middell, our associate producer, mutual friend. Tim is going to put on his GK sweater vest later and go to his distributist book club. Chadwick with the GK. He's always going to peg me as a GK guy, and I'll peg him as one right back. What's up, Chad? Actually, fake. There's a debate opened out about what FNC stands for. Fake name coward. Eric Witt. I think you can still successfully walk the line while being a DoD employee. That could be. It could be. It really depends. Shadrick says, Scott Hahn laid it down on this subject the other day on the Mass of the Ages interview on YouTube, and it was awesome. Okay, cool. His book, Hope to Die, is very good. It's not really a book about... It's not a polemic against cremation, but it's really powerful. Most Catholics should not be getting cremated. its roots are totally aggressively anti-Catholic secularism, a hatred of the body and mocking of the resurrection. Yes, Deacon Lappert made a good point. Grace builds upon nature. If you're a jerk in the order of nature, there's little hope of virtue in the order of grace. That's a great point.
Thank you. Yeah, did some of the people out there who hate you and I hear that?
Oh, who's that?
I was just saying there are lots of people out there that I hope hear that naturally, if you're jerky, then supernaturally you might have, I don't know, the Latin Mass, and you're still going to be jerky. And I don't know, maybe you'll still go to heaven, but it's just no fun to be around.
There's a funny interview from, I want to say 1959. It's a famous, so famous I'll forget his last name. It's John something, a BBC pioneering interviewer, kind of the Mike Wallace of England. And he interviewed Evelyn Waugh. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to post it here because I can. Evelyn Waugh. And it was introduced by a feminist BBC journalist, which is kind of a tautology. And she's complaining about Evelyn Waugh. What's his name? John Freeman, that's it. And now, Evelyn Waugh is described by the feminist who does the intro to this other John Freeman interview. And he's not cuddly. You don't sense that he wants to give you a hug, but he's charitable. He's clear. He's patient with the guy who obviously is trying to trigger and get him on a gotcha moment. But there's an example of someone who was kind of crotchety, had a naturally crabby personality, and was called on this. This is a famous anecdote from his life. Basically, hey, Evelyn, Mr. Waugh, why are you such a jerk? And he said something like, well, imagine if I wasn't a Catholic, how worse I'd be.
Yeah. I didn't know that was from that interview. I've read that he said that.
Yeah, I don't think it was either, but that's a famous anecdote about him. By the way, I love learning that anecdotes that I've been repeating aren't true. I love Mythbusters. So here's one. As Mother Teresa said, God has called me to be faithful, not successful. She never said that.
Yeah, no, I know. Preach the gospel, if necessary, use words.
Exactly.
St. Francis never said that or would have.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, people are going back. They're making internal jokes about not being entertained. Here's a question.
People out there get this? I'd love if people are commenting on that to be like, do you get this? That a lot of Catholics, especially traditionalists, are trying to use the Mass and sacramentals as entertainment. Well, that's really not what it's for. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, that's true. Someone says, classic interview. Waugh's brevity was scalding. Yes. One question I want to ask you, Tim, it's something I find head scratchy, and I think it's partly explained by Rene Girard and basic jealousy and people who want to imitate other people. And the closer you get to having a shared ideal, the more enmity there is between the players. So you think of Yitzhak Shamir, the Israeli prime minister, was shot by a fanatical hard-right Jew, right? Mahatma Gandhi was shot by a Hindu extremist. It often happens that, you could say Malcolm X. We now know who Malcolm X was murdered by. If you want to find out more, there's an amazing documentary on that. Why do trads spend so much time going after you? You'd think that you're rowing in the same direction to a 98% proportion. You love the Latin Mass. You decry the loss of the beautiful traditions that nurtured the church for centuries. You are a critic of Pope Francis. You are going to vote for Donald Trump. You're pro-life with no exceptions, no apologies. And yet you're the special object of ire. It's a curious thing. Why do you think it is?
A lot of it comes down to historically what was happening in 2018, 2019. So there's I guess after the TNT show, sort of ended, which it was a sensation. I don't know how else to describe it. People wanted an explanation, right? And the closest thing they ever got to an explanation was there's some part of it. There's more to the story, but there's some parting of ways between me and Taylor on SSPX, Lefebvre. That's the closest thing that either of us has ever given for an explanation for the end of that. And so anyone who says anything in the purity spiraling trad circles, anything approaching negative, even though my theology is closer to Lefebvre's than any of the other Pariti probably there at Vatican II, about Lefebvre himself, become a special kind of bête noire for the trads who are kind of just brainwashed to think in terms of categorical imperatives. And so a lot of it's just an understanding gap that the concept you're describing out of the mouth of René Girard is it usually happens when you're dealing with a higher level concept, which requires distinctions within distinctions within distinctions within distinctions, and yet you get a grassroots movement, like the trad movement kind of was made into a newer, younger grassroots movement, largely by TNT. And you have a lot of devotees that struggle with one distinction, let alone a distinction within a distinction within a distinction. Mm-hmm. So it's almost that the distinctions are just too complicated for many of the adherents, and so a lot of also John Zmirak calls them tradanistas. There are many socialist leaning trads that don't like my political economy. And a lot of trads that have been kind of brainwashed to think that America is evil, and there's a lot of anti-Americanism. There's a lot of anti-Donald Trumpism within the traditionalist movement when you get to the kids that are struggling with the distinctions within distinctions. So does that
go to? Oh, by the way, I said I misspoke. I think I said Itzhak Shamir. It's Itzhak Rabin who was assassinated. He was preceded by Shamir. So, thank you again. Great thing about being Catholic, you get to be corrected.
Do you think? Wait, can I
sure.
stop you there?
100%.
Do you think that I mean I don't know if I'm seeing it's certain quarters of the trads, I guess, dislike. I think a lot of people that consider themselves retrogrades are kind of like me, are like, I guess I'm a trad. I mean, I like the Latin Mass. I don't like the Novus Ordo. I don't think it's invalid. So I don't know whether that makes me a trad that's not rad or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I'm. Someone else asked me this question. I'm like, there's definitely a quarter of a section of the trads that are as you describe them. I don't know if it's a bigger section than I'm realizing, and I'm just not self-aware or something. But I mean, there are a lot of retrogrades out there that buy my books and watch my programs. I think are kind of like me. Like, I guess I'm sort of a less rad trad on the issue of Vatican II or whatever. I don't know. Well, what do you think? Did you have any feedback on that, or what's your?
I definitely identify with the anti-American undertow you see in a lot of trad writers. They want to say that America's founding documents are crypto Freemasonic, and that America is Protestant root and branch, and it's going down soon, and the only thing we can do is have a Spanish-style Catholic monarchy, and then everything will be Skittles and roses. And obviously I disagree with that altogether. But there are also a lot of false ideas of America that are in circulation among conservative ink. One of them is that America, it's good that America is an empire. No, it was not founded as an empire. It's a republic. It's a democracy with an asterisk on it. And that's what I think, if we can turn to with the upcoming election, why it's so important. I don't even think it's close now. It does not compute with me, even among Catholic leftists, to still stick to the never Trumper position. It does not compute. There's so much at stake with Ruth Bader Ginsburg now seriously ailing, with the COVID-19 kitchen sink that's thrown against the wall. I mean, they couldn't get him on impeachment. They couldn't get him on Russian collusion. They couldn't get him on the BLM/Antifa so far anyway, and now the COVID-19 lockdown. I think all of it is a function of globalists to destabilize America by knocking out President Trump. I think Mr. Biden is just like a weekend at Bernie's automaton. They trundle him out for a couple of multiply rehearsed commercials, and that's it. He's made no presentations. He has no solutions. He's kind of off in a closet. And maybe we'll just see him during the debates. And you can purchase popcorn in advance because that'll be maybe the most entertaining lopsided debate in history.
Yeah, that'll be good. We're looking forward to it in my household. Yeah.
Why is this the anti-Trump strain or virus? How did it worm its way into mainstream Catholic thinking? I mean, some Catholic hosts, they don't want their voting stripes to be seen. They don't think Catholic broadcasters should say who they're voting for. Why?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends whether you're talking the anti-Trump left cats or the anti-Trump right cats. There are different competing motivations. The left ones just know, I mean, the answer to the left cats that are anti-Trump is basically the soft heresy of the seamless garment. They try to make life issues. I mean, you really can't vote Democrat, people, in 2020 or really any time after, I don't know, 2000, probably 1990. You just can't vote Democrat. It is the anti-life party. The Republican Party kicking and screaming, because it's been run by neoconservatism really until 2016, from Bob Dole when he was the muscle in the Senate onward. I mean, really, Richard Nixon was the first major neoconservative that really, they didn't care about the social issues at all. They brought over Keynesian economics plus a kind of hawkish foreign policy. A lot of my critics forget that neocons, I've never identified as neocon. I've always rejected neoconservatism. It also includes the Keynesianism that they're more akin to. Bailouts like TARP bailout and entitlement benefits and things like that. A lot of the people that think they're paleocons who are tradinistas, they don't even understand that they are neoconservative when it comes to their political economy. But anyway, I think that's what it is on the left, is that, they don't like Trump and they hope that the seamless garment can obtain and can perdure and continue into the future to make them seem like they care about some life issues, immigration and the environment. That's kind of life. On the right, it's much more complex, and I don't think I'll attempt an answer other than the right caps that dislike anything associated with the survival of America, which Trump is our kind of last and best hope. He's not perfect. I don't share all of his points of view. I certainly do like his punchiness, but I just think the right cats, the tradinistas, that really just want to see America go down, and they have basically a socialist point of view on political economy. I think they just hate anyone that's not an outright distributist or whatever. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you can.
Yeah, well, it's a curious meeting and if not literal meeting of minds of the left and the right in their desire to see America go down for their respective reasons. Kind of like the weird alliance of the far left and militant Islam. Where's the feminist outcry against the treatment of Muslim women around the world? Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. That it's an especially weird amalgam that you get with these. Again, I didn't even know the term before John Zmirak said. I was like, have you noticed there's a lot of like socialists in the traditional movement? And I think I was talking to John Zmirak. He was like, oh yeah, me and my buddy, I think he said Jason Jones or someone. No, it wasn't Jason. Someone else at the stream was like, we've called them tradinistas for 10 years. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it's not just my curious observation. Then I guess it's accurate. It's weird. And it is like what you said. It's like the socialists who like Islam.
Did you just have a light burned out there? All of a sudden,
yes,
you had a diminishment in the refulgence of your glory. One more point on trads. I wrote a 3,600 word essay for Culture War magazine, comparing Medjugorje with the Society of Pius X, and one of those elements that they have in common is Gnosticism. There's a secret knowledge. They have this unique insight that can only be imparted by this one leader or by this one apparition. And it doesn't matter if it's endorsed by the church. Appeals to church authority are the weakest of all arguments. They just don't connect, because it's the authority itself that's being either challenged or ignored.
Right.
So
I agree.
More curious parallels,
Yeah. 3,600 words. That's good, and it takes time to develop an extended analogy like that, particularly between two ostensible non-likes.
They're ecclesial opposites. Yeah, it's weird.
Right.
By the way, you almost became Boris Karloff there with the below the chin lighting. It was terrifying. It wasn't even Halloween, and I was getting frightened.
That's weird. Yeah, I'm having a hard time with the lights here. Sorry.
That's okay.
This is a new studio. I got an empty home here in Mississippi, United States of America. And so my setup, I did a podcast this morning, Rules for Retrogrades, and my setup is Spartan. So.
Awesome. People are asking about retrogrades. Rules for Retrogrades is the book by my guest this live stream, Tim Gordon, and his brother Dave Gordon. And it's also the basis for the podcast, R4R, Rules for Retrogrades. You can see, maybe if you can tilt your cranium to your right, Tim, people can see the logo. I noticed that's actually your face. That's a skull of your physiognomy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tim, what's the subtitle?
This actually comes from the Capuchin crypt in Rome, in Barberini Piazza. It means what we once were, you soon will be. What we are now. What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you soon will be. And the whole crypt is made of the bones of these Capuchin monks.
It's one of my favorite places. It's so cool. Catholic. Calvinists go in there. They probably get hives.
They do. And the Calvinist Catholics, large sections of the trads, like, why do you have a skull? It's like, it's a Catholic skull. It's a Capuchin, man.
Yeah, memento mori. We live in Simon Fraser University. The guy's name's Ernest Becker, another Canadian, wrote a very powerful book called The Denial of Death. We live in a death-denying culture. So that skull is kind of a nod to the resurrection. All right. I want to thank you, Tim Gordon. We could go for a long, long, long time. I want to respect your time there in beautiful Mississippi. We'll miss you out here in California. We know you're going to continue to do great things. Count on our prayers. TimothyJGordon.com if you want to send some green-colored love his way for his family, and that he continue to bounce upward by God's grace. Join us in the war to fight against the PC thought police, and join forces with people who are challenging the grand narrative, whether it's Fauci, whether it is fake news, whether it is the fake Catholic news. It certainly has an analogy inside mainstream Catholic media, and people are waking up to the fact that something's rotten in the state of Denmark, and we're not getting the full truth. So, CoffinNation.com, check it out. We think you'll like it. We do this every week. It's called Ask Away Thursdays. Once a month, we open it up for a superstar and the rest of the universe. So, Tim Gordon,
thanks.
Final thoughts?
Thanks, brother. I'm just super appreciative to be able to come on with you for the, I don't know what it is, 4th or 5th time. And people really need to understand that the alliances that are formed along the right, as between you and me, for example, are real friendships because they're based in virtue. And it's one of the rules for retrogrades. The alliances that the left makes efficaciously are based in mere utility. And yet the alliances drawn along the right are made in love and fellowship, as J.R.R. Tolkien writes. And I really appreciate all of your support and your friendship through the years, Pat, and give my love to your family.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Me too. And it's always an honor to be able to use the word soteriologically.
Yeah, It's a good one.
All right. Godspeed, Tim. Keep in good touch. God bless and be
Peace.
well. All right.
Will do.
This is live stream with me, Patrick Coffin. Check out coffinnation.com. Click on that link. We think you'll have a blast. We have more fun than canon law permits, to be honest with you. In the meantime, be a saint. What else is there?